Hi there, I'm Kathleen Jasper, and this is part 2 of our Praxis Core Grammar series. In this video, I talk about misplaced modifiers and parallel structure. Let's get started. Okay, so here we go. Let's also talk about another thing that people have a hard time with is misplaced modifiers. All right, we get a ton of emails and questions asking us about misplaced modifiers. Now, misplaced modifiers are pretty easy to identify once you know where they are, okay? So let's take a look at this question here. We have our answer choices, and I always like to go to our answer choices first because that kind of tells me what I'm having to do here. And in this case, I'm asking you to decide what the error is. Now, you may or may not see something like this on the Praxis Core Grammar, but I really like this question only because you have to identify what the error is, and I really like that about this question. So we have A is misplaced modifier, B is parallel structure, C is subject-verb agreement, and D is pronoun antecedent agreement. Now, in the first 2 slides that we did, we already looked at subject-verb agreement, so you know what that is. Remember, the board is having its meeting. The board is the subject, the verb is, and in this case, they agree. Pronoun antecedent would be the board is having its. Its is the pronoun, the board is the antecedent. So we've already gone through those 2 things. Now we have to talk about A and B. What is a misplaced modifier and what is parallel structure? Now, while waiting in the voting area, cell phones and computers are prohibited. Now, this is a common way that you'll see misplaced modifiers, and I just gave it away. A is the correct answer here. We're going to talk about parallel structure in just a second, so don't worry. But while waiting in the voting area, cell phones and computers are prohibited. When people do misplaced modifier questions on the test, and remember, we're always going to want to think like a test maker, not a test taker. So when they do misplaced modifiers on the exam, sometimes they'll do this dependent clause here, and then the comma, and then the misplaced modifier comes after. Now, this is called a dependent clause here. So let's just talk about clauses again really quickly. While waiting in the voting area, you need something else, right? If I just stopped right there, you would be like, okay, yes, what? While waiting in the voting area. That's why we call it a dependent clause, because it depends on the rest of the sentence in order for it to like survive or be able to be attached to the sentence. So we have a comma there, which is good. Dependent clauses and independent clauses can be separated by just a comma. Because remember, commas are weak, and so are dependent clauses. Dependent clauses are not full sentences. Therefore, you would use a comma, and you need a comma after that. If there were no comma, it would be a run-on, and that would be problematic. So just a little quick thing there about clauses. So in this case, we have a dependent clause here, and then we have cell phones and computers are prohibited. In this case, this is the independent clause. Cell phones and computers are prohibited. I could capitalize that C, put a P at the end of prohibited, and it could stand on its own as an independent clause. So I'm separating 2 clauses, dependent, independent, correctly with the comma. So we're good there. The problem lies here. While waiting in the voting area, cell phones and computers are prohibited. Well, what is waiting in the voting area? Are cell phones waiting in the voting area, or are people waiting in the voting area? In this case, people are waiting in the voting area. So we have a misplaced modifier here. We have voting area. Oops, that should say area. Sorry, that says voting R. Waiting in the voting area is modifying cell phones here. And because it's modifying cell phones, it's incorrect. It should be modifying the people waiting in the voting area. Now, like I said, I always want to show you how to identify this stuff on test day very easily. And this is how they will do misplaced modifiers sometimes. They'll have the dependent clause, and then this part here is in the wrong order. So really, this should be fixed up to say, while people wait in the voting area, using cell phones and computers is prohibited. So that would be a better way to revise this sentence. So this is a misplaced modifier here. Cell phones, it sounds like cell phones are waiting in the voting area. Now let's try another misplaced modifier here, okay? You may see it done like this. Now remember, we have an underlined portion of the sentence, and then we have A is going to be no change, okay? So let's read the question first here. The server brought the food to customers in paper baskets. Now, when I say this, you don't think, oh, misplaced modifier. You just think food. You picture the food is in paper baskets and the server is taking them out to the people eating the food. And you're placing the modifiers in the correct spots every time you look at it, right? So, but the way it is set up right now, it's incorrect. The server brought the food to customers in paper baskets. It looks like the customers are in paper baskets, and this is not a good thing. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the customers are not in the paper baskets, that the customers are actually eating the food. Okay, so we have the server. Everybody's kind of coming to this consensus here. The server brought food in paper baskets to the customers. That is the correctly placed modifiers. And every other one, they are incorrect. A is incorrect because the customers are in the paper baskets. B is incorrect because in paper baskets, the server brought the food. That's another way you'll see it. We have in paper baskets, and it looks like now the server is in the paper baskets. D, the food was in paper baskets brought to the customers. This is just a mess. It's not grammatically correct and it's not cohesive. And E, the server in paper baskets brought the food to the customers. Absolutely not. Okay, so very good. Well done. Now, the next piece we're going to talk about is parallel structure. And a lot of people miss this on the exam because most people don't know what parallel structure is, and most people can't spot it incorrectly in a sentence. If I didn't have this laid out like this, and you just read this as we move forward with new employees, we must be sure to train them properly, inspire them daily, and ask them appropriate questions. If I said that to you, you would say, wow, there's nothing wrong with her grammar, but there is. When it comes to parallel structure, we want to make sure that our list is parallel. So let's take a look. As we move forward with new employees, okay, I have A here and B here. Now, this is another way you'll see it on the Praxis Core exam. You'll also see it this way on the FTCE GKELS exam as well. You'll have portions of the sentence underlined, and you will have to decide which part, if any, are incorrect. And in this case, if nothing is incorrect, you would choose E. But they're going to have little pieces here. So as we move forward with new employees, new is fine with A. That's new, like new, as in brand new. Employees, we have a comma here that's part of the underline, and that works because this is a dependent clause. As we move forward with new employees, now here comes the independent clause. Here comes the independent clause. We must be sure to train them properly. That looks good. We have a comma there. Inspire them daily, comma there, and ask them appropriate questions. Well, right now I have a list. This is a list. And when I talk about parallel structure, I'm a lot of times talking about a list. There are other ways you can use parallel structure, but on this test, it'll be done in a list. And you can see I have inspire or train, which is a verb, and then I have them properly, which is an adverb, and then I have inspire them daily. Inspire is a verb, and then I have an adverb here, and then the last part of the list I have and ask them appropriate questions. I have a verb, and then I have an adjective, and then I have a noun, plural noun. So this last hanging part here is not parallel. It needs to be fixed. So if you see a list in a grammar question on the test, like if you're looking at it and you see a list, even if there's a colon or a list or something like that, slow down and make sure that you check your list to see if it is parallel. And notice here that it is not parallel. And so we would have to change D and make D parallel. And the way I would probably do this is say, as we move forward with new employees, we must be sure to train them properly, inspire them daily, and question them appropriately. That would be the best way, okay? Because then question becomes a verb and appropriately becomes the adverb, all right? Okay, so again, let's take a look. We've got some punctuation we can talk about here too. I always like to do like 5 different things when I'm talking about a sentence. So we have, she understood 3 things about that time period. Well, A looks fine. She understood 3 things about that. Like there's nothing grammatically incorrect there. So we'll leave A. Then we have B here. Now B, we want to check out because we have a colon here. All right. Now let's talk about colons really quickly. Colons are pieces of punctuation that separate independent clauses with lists, or independent clauses with a definition. Let me give you an example. Here's my independent clause. I ate a huge lunch today. I could put a period there, and that would be the independent clause, but I'm going to tell you all the things I had for lunch. So I put a colon, sandwich, comma, salad, comma, and dessert. Okay? It has to be a full independent clause there. I have to be able to put a period there, and it should be able to stand on its own in order to use the colon. So she understood 3 things about that time period is a sentence. I can put a period there. So a colon is okay so far, now that I've got the colon there. And it looks like I have a list after it. I have being hungry, comma, grace, comma, and acceptance. So it looks like the colon is good. We're good there. Another way you might see it, let me just show you up here. Let's say I have an independent clause, colon, and then I have a definition. Let's say my sentence was this. Here comes my independent clause. We decided to focus on the most important thing, colon, student achievement. So my independent clause is, we decided to focus on the most important thing. I could put a period there, but then I'm going to tell you what the most important thing is. And I decided to do colon, and then I define it. Student achievement. Or we could say, she was only afraid of one thing in life, colon, dark water. Okay? Or whatever. So you get it. I always hate coming up with examples because I come up with the weirdest examples and then I watch back and I'm like, why did you say that? It's so weird. Anyways, and then it's on the internet for everyone to see. So, okay, let's go in here. So we have a colon and now that's good. We're good there with the colon. All right, now we're looking at the list. And again, we're talking about parallel structure here, but I just wanted to get that colon exercise in there. And so we have being hungry, grace and acceptance. Well, grace is a noun, acceptance is a noun, but up here over at C, I have being hungry. All right, I have a verb here and an adjective here. I am hungry. Okay, so that's a problem because it's not parallel. So in this case, we would choose C, and what we would change it to is hunger. She understood 3 things about that time period: hunger, grace, and acceptance. There you go. Less is more. Okay? Noun, noun, and noun. When we talk about grammar, less is more. Always go with fewer words. Keep it concise. Like Hemingway used to say, be brief.